Rotarians and guests. It's quite a privilege to be up here today to be introducing our guest speaker. It's interesting though, Rod, I don't know if I'm the chair or speaker, but I think we've had a lot of mix-ups tonight in terms of what's happening. So if you like, I can be the speaker, and we'll ask Dick if he can be the chairperson. Okay, just for those of you who are specifically interested, John Tomich is having what do you call it, a laminectomy or something like that with a couple of his teeth. Okay, so certainly not life-threatening. Well, let's hope not. Anyway, let me talk about Dick. Dick Wilson. He has a Bachelor of Medicine. He's got a Diploma of Obstetrics. He's a Fellow of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, a Fellow of the Australian College of Rural and Remote Medicine. He's eminently qualified. He practiced medicine in the UK and Germany and Canada before returning to Australia to join a rural practice. Okay? And he lived with his family for 13 years in Strathalbyn before moving to the Adelaide Hills. He's practiced family medicine in Stirling and Bridgewater with special interests in, I was just talking to him about this, aviation and motorsports and diving medicines, quite specific qualifications. He does stuff in community mental health and minor surgery. He loves assisting in surgery there. He's also quite specialist in some of the other things he does, but I'll be here all day talking about his qualifications. He's here today because he is actually currently a regional director of the board of Australian Rotary Health. Okay. He's going to spend some time today talking to us about medical research, not just the foundation itself, and he's going to show you the links between the foundation and medical research in general. Most importantly, he's going to enjoy looking at himself in the mirror here in front of himself. It almost feels like he's talking to himself out here. So please excuse the lack of eye contact from Dick. I'll tell you that now. And good luck. Please welcome Dick Wilson.
Thanks, Well, that's a rather fulsome and foreboding introduction, Giuliano. Thank you very much. President Chris, Chairman Giuliano, a special welcome to you, Anna, from all the way from Zambia. It's nice to have met you. I hope you enjoy Adelaide. This is the third time I've spoken to the Rotary Club of Adelaide. The first time was at the Hotel Australia in 1976 when I brought my group study exchange team to address you. But this is certainly the first time that I address you as a director of, in my position as a director of Australian Rotary Health. Your club, without doubt, is the #1 club in Australia as far as we're concerned. We are absolutely in awe of the support that Adelaide Rotary Club have given. That's not going to move down, Rod, is it? Yeah, that's better, thanks. That's lovely, thanks. An absolutely fantastic support to Australian Rotary. Thanks, Giuliano. And on behalf of the chairman of the fund, Terry Grant, and my fellow board directors, I do bring their best wishes and our greetings and our thanks to Rotary Club of Adelaide for their support. I acknowledge that we've got a couple of district committee members here, Brett McMutry and Kay Darling. So I acknowledge their attendance today, and Kay, of course, chairs the HAP Day Committee, which is a D95009520 joint district committee, and HAP Day will be on again next year at the same time as Mental Health Week in October of 2013. I thought in the remaining 14 minutes 22 seconds that I've got that I might share a few thoughts about medicine and research. I, along with the indubitable Dr. Cockington, graduated in medicine at the end of 1966. So I've been in practice for nearly 46 years, the first year, of course, being a resident medical officer. In that time, medicine has changed dramatically. What was gospel in medical school back in the 60s has been challenged, studied, researched, and often found to be wanting. Medical research and the much touted evidence-based medicine is what we practice today, and that's what rules the roost. It's interesting to speculate, and I didn't talk to Fred about this because he was too busy getting me to buy him drinks at the bar. But the most dramatic change that's happened in those 46 years, and when you think about, we all have our own opinion about that, but some of the new treatment modalities that we use, some of the medicines, the drugs are much cleaner, they're more precise, they're better acting, they're safer. Some of the surgical and anaesthetic techniques, things like laparoscopy, the Da Vinci robot machine at the Royal Adelaide, some of the preventative medicine, Rotary of course has led the way there in dealing with polio plus. But I think that there's not much doubt about the fact that our ability to image the body has revolutionised the practice of medicine. My good friend John Tomich, if he was having that operation 46 years ago, they would have relied on X-rays and hoping that they get the right level of the spine to operate on. These days, with the wonderful benefits of CAT scans, MRI scans, PET scans, nuclear medicine, it has just absolutely changed the practice of medicine. I've just come back from America, and I must say there, the ability to be able to stand in a perspex screen, hold your hands up above your head for 3 seconds, making sure, of course, your trousers don't fall down because you've got to take your belt off, but that's how they can determine your security status in the States. I enjoyed having had a couple of hip replacements and a knee replacement because I don't have to go through all that other crap about being scanned. But as I say, the imaging with CAT scanning, computerised axial tomography, MRI, PET and nuclear scanning means that we can visualise every part of the body in 3D dimension if we want to, without having to resort to nasty exercises, nasty injections. We all right there? Nasty injections of dye or other radiopaque substances. Now, I just want to dwell on the fact that these changes in medicine didn't occur just sort of out of the e-cloud, but they came about because of research. Sometimes serendipity, more often just more research, often good luck that these research things produce the goods, but more and more it depends on the ability for people to research. In 1895, a German professor of physics, Wilhelm Röntgen, almost accidentally stumbled across electron beams emanating from a cathode ray tube, a Crookes tube it was called. He found that the rays passed through books and papers on his desk, and he called them X-rays. I'm not quite sure where the X came from, except it could have been short for X-rated, because of course you could see through clothing with these things, so old Röntgen might have been having a bit of a time of enjoyment. Sometimes they were called Röntgen rays, of course. But having established X-rays, he did the next logical research thing. He called his wife in and did some experiments with her. And he managed to produce the first X-ray of somebody's hand, which is a very famous historical picture. When she saw the picture, she said, "I have seen my death." Now, I'm not quite sure what she meant by that, other than to say she was absolutely right, because she did die many years later. Professor Röntgen received the first Nobel Prize for physics, the first one that was actually awarded for physics. And talking of imaging, of course, nuclear medicine has taken a giant leap over the last 40 years. And around the same time as Röntgen, Marie Curie, a Polish-born but researcher in Paris, developed the theory of radioactivity. It was almost by luck, actually, that she managed to isolate radioisotopes, and she became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in 1903, along with her husband Pierre and a man called Henri Becquerel. Unfortunately, in 1906, her equally famous husband Pierre was killed in a road accident. He was walking across the Rue Dauphine in Paris in heavy rain and was struck by a horse-drawn carriage. You wouldn't think that would kill you, but he fell under its wheels. He got a fractured skull, and that was the end. He held the chair of physics at the Sorbonne University, and this was offered to Marie. She became the first woman professor at that university. The other amazing thing about Marie Curie is that she also won a Nobel Prize in Chemistry. She's the only woman to have ever received 2 Nobel Prizes in different disciplines, and that was for her discovery of the elements plutonium and radium. She died in 1934 in, I suppose, true research style from the effects of years of radiation from radium, and she developed aplastic anemia and died. And just to bring it a bit closer to home, a couple of pathologists called Barry Marshall and our own Robin Warren, born in Adelaide, educated here, went to medical school here, did some research about gastric ulcers and chronic gastritis, and it was always thought that these conditions could not be caused by a bacteria, because no bacteria would be able to live in the acid environment in the stomach. Very difficult to culture, this stuff called Helicobacter pylori, but they succeeded in visualising colonies because they unintentionally left some petri dishes out on the bench over Easter, and when they came back after the Easter break, they found that there was some growth there, and they were able to actually identify Helicobacter pylori. Pure serendipity, just almost luck. But it disproved the notion that gastric ulcers were caused by stress or spicy food. And how do you tell whether that really works? Well, what you do is you mix up a beaker full and you drink it. And that's exactly what Barry Marshall did, and it made him as crook as a dog, as you can imagine. He developed vomiting and indigestion and reflux, but luckily they'd worked out that antibiotics can treat it, and so they were able to cure him. And those gentlemen were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine in 2005. A great effort. So I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is that research and Rotary Health Research role is just to help with the acquisition of knowledge, and it's just as important to find out what does work as it is to find out what doesn't work. It's encouraging, training and supporting new young researchers, and that is precisely what Ian Scott was aiming to do when in 1981 he was listening to the radio and he heard about cot death and sudden infant death syndrome. And he just thought there must be a better way that we've got of researching and managing this and avoiding these deaths. And I'm sure Fred Cockington and others, and particularly GPs, have all been involved in families where they've gone in to tend to their young child and found it dead in the cot. It's one of the most tragic things that you can find in medicine. So Scott started this Australian Rotary Health Research Fund in 1981, and by 1985 they had enough money to start allocating it to various research projects. And a professor in Tasmania, Terry Dwyer, was allocated some money to do a prospective epidemiological study, and it was during that research that he found that sleeping babies on their tummy was a major risk factor for sudden infant death syndrome. Very simple, but you know, without that research we may not have known that. The death rate halved over the years from 1990 to 1992, and that was as a result of the efforts of Dwyer and Australian Rotary Health Research. So the fund was up and running. Following this initial success, the fund adopted a strategy of supporting different areas of research every few years. And we looked at environmental health, the aged, the adolescents, family health, cancer research, a whole raft of things. But then in 1998, there was increasing recognition of the adverse effects that mental illness had on the health and well-being of children, youth and dogs. There's not a person in this room who hasn't been affected by somebody who's had a mental problem, whether it's a relative, a friend, a work colleague, one of your children. Everybody, it impinges on everybody at some stage. And one of the most tragic things about mental illness is the fact that it often affects the younger generation and the people that have got their whole life to live, both their career, their family, their opportunities, and it strikes them down such that they cannot develop those qualities, and their quality of life suffers enormously. And if you look at people with severe depressive illness or schizophrenia or any of the affective disorders, it just really is a tragedy to see young people suffering, particularly young people, and even children. So at the same time that the fund decided to broaden its role, we looked beyond research, and funds became available, and the government realised that Rotary clubs were in a very good position to act as sort of local agents of change. And this is when we were given funding to run mental health forums, which were community-based groups or seminars with the main aim of raising awareness about mental illness and destigmatising it. And once again, if I were to use an example of a woman, and I know this story, she was in the hospital for a surgical operation. All her friends and family visited her. The room was full of flowers. She made a rapid and uneventful recovery. 6 months later, she was in the same hospital with depression. Nobody came. Nobody wanted to know. They didn't know what to say to her. They couldn't talk to her. And it was such a reflection, the fact that we don't know how to understand or manage people with a mental illness. So the forums have been an enormous success, and more recently the mental health first aid courses that have been run for a couple of years. We don't have funding for that anymore, but they've been a wonderful success as well. And then, just moving on, in 2000 we decided to adopt mental illness research as a major focus, and in doing so we decided that the name Australian Rotary Health Research Fund didn't fully encompass our role in the community. We were very much more running programs, raising awareness and putting into place teaching and other schemes, and so we've changed the name to Australian Rotary Health. Now, if I just leave you with one message, it is not the Australian Rotary Health Foundation. I shouldn't say that to a club as esteemed as this, but I often go out and speak at Rotary clubs, and then they immediately say, and your foundation. We get confused with the Rotary Foundation. The Rotary Foundation, which I've been a beneficiary of by leading a group study exchange team, is a most wonderful and highly successful arm of Rotary International. It was mooted and started by Arch Clump in 1918, and it's just an enormously good area to support. But please don't confuse it with Australian Rotary Health. It's what I describe as the jewel in the crown of Australian Rotary, because it is a Rotary Australian-inspired organisation. And when you think that since we started, we've contributed over $29 million to research, it's a pretty bloody good effort. So having embarked on funding mental health research, we needed to differentiate ourselves from the main government funder, which is the National Health and Medical Research Council. They're the biggest providers of mental health research, but Australian Rotary Health are by far the second biggest provider, which I think is a very creditable effort. What we wanted to do was support research that looked at interventions and looked at psychosocial and health services rather than looking at more of the biological research. So the more academic research, which probably doesn't have a place in our communities, we just felt that we wanted to be a bit more community-based. So very briefly, because Giuliano's going to stand up and stop me in a minute, just 3 or 4 things that we've achieved. One of our researchers, Felice Jack, researched the role of diet and its link to anxiety and depression. Her work was rated by Medscape as one of the 10 most important studies in 2010 on mood and psychotic disorders. The role of clonidine when added to psychostimulant medication in hyperactive and aggressive children received a journal award from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in 2004. These are all research projects that have been funded by Australian Rotary Health. E-therapy for anxiety disorders. You can go online now and lock into anxiety online, and our research led to Swinburne University taking this on board, and it's now fully funded by the government. The beauty of it is that it provides free information, assessment and online diagnosis for anxiety disorders, and of course you don't need a therapist there, you can do it yourself. So that makes it a lot cheaper. And the media reporting of suicide. I have 1 minute left. I will just jump then to the fact that Australian Rotary Health, your funding partnership contributions currently stand at $56,000, and the Rotary Club of Adelaide, the best performing club in Australia with total contributions to date of $370,000. I thank every Rotarian for your support. Much of this support has come from personal contribution. I thank you for that very much, and I would like to conclude by asking David Mottram to come forward, because David, I would like to present a companion award to David for his support. David's been a great supporter of this club. He runs the Magic Show, assistant secretary, and is generally a very good helper in Rotary. And if you ever want to move clubs, we've got a space for you up in Stirling, David. So I'll just read through here, David. Sorry. Up the way there. So David, on behalf of the Board of Australian Rotary Health, I would like to present you with this certificate recognising you as a companion of Australian Rotary Health, and we're very grateful for your donation. Thank you, David. So President Chris and Chairman Giuliano, thank you very much for having me here today.
Rotarians and guests, we have time for one question. Thank you.
I would like to raise the superbug that was hanging about till 2020 or so, I believe. But apparently people coming over from the south of India who have a lot of antibiotics, far more than they should be having, are spreading their superbug quite widely. Now, I heard about this on Channel 2 during the week. Also, apparently, the hygiene in our hospitals is not quite what it used to be. I've just spent a few months in the RA myself and found that wards are not, and the bathrooms are not as they should be. And the professor mentioned perhaps we should start using bleach again, because bleach is the best way of cleaning things like the superbugs. So how can we bring something like this about, that our hospitals start teaching people how to clean again? But they seem to have lost the skill.
That's a very good question. The question really is about superbugs and the fact that the overuse of antibiotics has now bred some resistant bacteria which are very, very hard to treat. And the person asking the question really was blaming, and I think quite rightly, the level of hygiene in hospitals and generally in medicine. Believe it or not, the simple procedure of staff washing their hands a lot more regularly has made an enormous difference. But look, I think when you get John Hill here to speak as Minister of Health, I'm very much likely to direct that question to him.
Well, it remains with me to thank our speaker today, Dick. Dick provided us a summary of medical research breakthroughs. That was fantastic to get that sort of very short history. But certainly he pointed out something to me that you wouldn't want to be an early researcher because you're going to likely to put yourself or your wife at risk. So I was going to invite my wife today. She wouldn't let me do anything to her then. Anyway, right, as we know, she'll think I'm researching. Research funded by Australian Rotary Health. I think we learned this today. Research funded by Australian Rotary Health has saved lives. Has saved many lives. Used lives of infants and lives of aged and lives of middle-aged people like us. So, Dick, thank you for your presentation today. I apologise for leaning over the mic, but I just want to leave it at this level. Please accept this little token of our... you might have something different, but this one's from previous speeches, but please accept these and a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.